Hi and welcome to part 1 of 3 of this mini-series where we're going to be covering the route of the Shrewsbury to Newport Canal. We'll be starting at Shrewsbury and we'll be working our way all the way up to Norbury Junction. What we'll also do as we move along the canal is we'll take a look at the work that's been done on the restoration of the canal by the Shrewsbury Newport Canal Trust. So without further ado, let's dive straight into our side-by-side maps and we'll make a start moving up the canal. Okay, so here we are. We are using a side-by-side map which is courtesy of the National Libraries of Scotland, which is really handy for what we want to be able to do here, because as you can see on the right hand side is Google Earth. On the left hand side these are maps from 1885 to 1900. The idea of these maps is so that on the right hand side, if you can see I'm moving the cursor around, on the left hand side if you look you'll be able to see the cursor is mimicked on the other side, and what that is on the left hand side the maps are from 1885 to 1900 like I said, and they are overlaid so that when we move the cursor on what we can see these days it will then show us on the map what it was at that particular time. As we start here we can see that we're above Shrewsbury, really distinctive loop of the River Severn, and what we'll do now is just drop a little bit closer into the town so that we can see exactly where we are. And where we are is by the railway station. Here's the railway line here, and point of reference for people who aren't from Shrewsbury but they may very well know this. This is the Dana Shrewsbury prison. This here is the Royal Mail sorting office, and above that is Morris Lubricants. So as we go a little bit further up here, if we look on the left hand side we can see where the canal is running. If we look on the right hand side we can see a very distinct tree line. This now is a towpath, but that was the original path of the canal itself, and as you can see on the left hand side it came across the road, or under the road rather. There was a bridge over it and it terminated in this area here on the right. This little building here is a place called the Butter Market. That's now a nightclub. That was built sometime after the canal was completed, and that was predominantly for bringing goods into, for sorting and processing. But then as we start to move our way up a little bit again, if we look on the right hand side we can see the tree line. Now what was also here, if on the right hand side, I'm just circling it, that was formerly a tavern, an inn called the Canal Tavern. And what we'll do is we'll drop down onto Google Street View and we'll have a look around at what was there, and we'll be able to have a look and see the entrance to the towpath and where the canal ran and terminated. Right, here we are outside the Canal Tavern pub. This pub's now closed, and it was closed then, and this one was taken in 2009, and I've gone back to 2009 simply because there's some more buildings which have been put up around here, but I will show you that very shortly. This is a little bit more open, so it makes it a little bit easier to explain when I'm using a cursor to point to where things actually were. So, Canal Tavern here, and across the back of it ran the canal. Across the back here and up towards Ditherington and up towards the Flax mill. Now I mentioned before the towpath, so if we just move back down here a little bit, here's the entrance to the towpath. I have tried to stop the computer on to look down into the towpath, but it won't work for me, so I shan't bother trying to do that one again. Now the canal ran across here, or rather under here. There are some photos of the bridge. I haven't been down, but as far as I'm aware, I have asked a few people, there's no sign of what was of the bridge that was formerly there. But here's the entrance to the towpath, canal down here, and it ran across the road here, and it ran into what is now Morris's yard. So if we just go down here by the gates, we'll be able to get a little bit more. So, canal runs under the road here, and into here and terminates here, and this is where the basin was. This is Morris's yard here, and beyond that is the Royal Mail sorting office. So as at the beginning I was saying about where the Dana prison was, that was a point of reference. So if you need to pop back and have a look, do that now, because that will show you where the butter market is in relation to here, because you can't see that from here. So here is the Dana prison, and just beyond it, beyond these buildings here, is the butter market. Now, like I said, that was built sometime after the canal was opened, and that was used for processing goods. These sheds, I believe, were here. I will have to confirm that, but I have seen some photos from the 70s, and they were shown then, and on some older maps as well, but I will have to verify that. And in fact, if anybody does know that, please feel free to leave that bit of information in the comments below. But I think what we can see from this is, because this, Google Earth is so good for being able to see exactly where things were, and especially with the help of the side-by-side maps, we can see it there, then you can drop down onto specific points, and it makes it really, really helpful. So what I'll do now is, like I was saying, because there was talk a few years ago of the Canal Tavern being taken down, and I'm pretty glad it hasn't been, to be honest. Okay, so here we are outside the Canal Tavern again. This picture was taken in 2009, and what I'll do now is I will show you a picture that is very up to date from 2021. So as we can see, Canal Tavern here, it was due to be taken down, like I said, and it hasn't been, and it's now remaining, which is really, really nice. These houses have gone up and been made to look like they're quite old. And if I just move back down here again, this is the entrance that we were talking about. So it's not quite so closed off as it were, because this is still used every single day. Right, back up here in the air, we'll start to move our way up the canal a little bit now. So on the right hand side, we're navigating along the towpath towards Ditherington, and as you can see, the canal is coming up here, and this is where it would have gone under the road. There were some bridges here, and we'll take a look at some of the photographs of what was there previously and give a little bit of information about the history of the flax mill and what's being done with it now. Here we have an older photo of the Ditherington flax mill. It's the first iron frame building in the world and described as the grandfather of skyscrapers due to its construction. Construction started in 1796 and was completed in 1797 at a cost of £17,000. Fell into disrepair and has since been modernised, as we will see in some later photos. This is the most up-to-date photo that I've got of the flax mill currently. Notice on the right hand side where the earth is, that is where the canal formerly would have run through. There was talk of reinstating the water in front of the flax mill, but I'm not entirely sure if that's going to happen. It would be really, really nice to put the maltings back into what we would have seen a couple of hundred years ago. The bridge that we're about to see would have been towards the left-hand side, and as we'll be able to see, there's a footprint of a building which is no longer there, directly in front of the flax mill, joining right onto the side of the canal. This really is one of my favourite photographs. I think it's absolutely lovely. As we can see on the right-hand side, the canal running along the side of the flax mill there. Like I made reference to in the previous picture, the footprint of the building, which is no longer there, is running right the way along the side of the canal and is joining onto the mill itself. Also in the background we can see windows of the flax mill open, so at this time we would assume that this was taken whilst the mill was in full operation. But the best thing about this photo, I really think, is we can see the kids outside the flax mill, some standing on the side of the bridge over the canal. That would be pretty frowned upon today. What I've also got on the next photo is a picture of the reworked factory bridge which was reconstructed in 1913. So we'll take a look at that picture now. But I do really like this photograph. I think it's absolutely timeless, and I think the children in this photo really show what life would have been like back at the time of the operation of the flax mill. Here we have a picture of the factory bridge which was reconstructed in 1913. The bit of information that I got with this photo says that this is looking towards the flax mill, but I don't think it is, because in the background we can see what looks like domestic dwellings, but I'm not entirely sure. So if anybody's got any further information on that, please feel free to leave that in the comments below. What we can see here though, on the bridge itself, if you look in the middle of you can see the brickwork. If you look just down below it, there's a sign, and that sign says Factory Bridge and it says the date that it was all reconstructed. That's been taken out, and that's now been put into some of the blockwork on the opposite side of the road that we'll look at very shortly. Right, here we are with one of our best friends, Google Street View. So this is going to give us a bit of a look as to where things were back then. As we're looking straight up the road here, this is where the factory bridge that we were just looking at previously would have come across the road here. Now, I mentioned before about the sign that was removed from that bridge as it was taken down. And if we look just along here, that's where it is. Rebuilt 1913, factory bridge number 47. This direction here with the canal would have run back towards the Canal Tavern that we were talking about before, and it would have come under the road here and then swept around into the flax mill itself. So if we just pop up here, we can see here, this is a slightly older picture than I showed you before, as we can see that the retaining wall of where the canal would have been is being put back in there. And as we discussed before, there was talk of this section going back into water. Whether that will happen or not, I just don't know, but I think it would be really, really nice if it were, and it would add to the tourist attraction. When we were looking at that lovely picture of the children on the bridge, this is where that bridge would have been, just here running into the flax mill. Now, I also said about the building which is no longer there. So as we just look along the screen here, this area here is where that building would have been. That's long gone, and as you can see from the pictures here, the flax mill is nicely under restoration. Being a Grade 1 listed building and the first cast iron frame in the world, it's a significant piece of history, not only for Shrewsbury, Shropshire, and it also coincides with the running of our canal. So just to recap from down here, this is where the canal would have run along. And as we go into the next section, there's all domestic houses along here now. But the road itself, to gain access to these houses, is in the line of the canal. So I'm assuming that that was actually the original canal bed. But as we can see, the canal would have come along here, swept around under here, and it would have come along underneath the road and back down towards the Canal Tavern. These buildings wouldn't have been here. I don't think this building would have been here, but I don't know about that. But certainly these ones are very, very new. But Google Earth really is helpful for this type of thing. So now starting to move up a little bit from the flax mill, we're moving across here. These are now domestic houses, but as we can see on the right hand side, there was nothing shown there then. As it swept again under the road, it went past, there's a pub in Shrewsbury and it's now called the Coach. At the time it was called the Comet. That changed fairly recently, I believe, but I don't know the date on that one. But still, people around here still do refer to it as the Comet. So that's still there now. And as we can see, there would have been another bridge for the road to go over. But as we then move on to this part of the canal, again, it's towpath, still gets used every day. People walk their dogs, ride their bikes, use it for daily commutes into the town. And we'll move a little bit further up here. And this is where we start to come to the first of the big main roads that weren't there at the time. As you can see on the left, there's no road. This road's called Telford Way. And there's a set of traffic lights here. People of Shrewsbury will know this. If you don't, what I'll do is I'll drop down into Google Street View, and then we'll have a look at what's there now. So here we are on Telford Way, and as we can see, left to right is where the canal formerly ran, and it's the towpath now, which you can still access. A set of traffic lights there, so you can cross the road safely, and then it continues out towards Sundorn. Also, what I've stumbled across is this fantastic picture of Telford Way running across the top of the canal. As we can see the canal there running along, it's actually really quite wide there, and that gives us some kind of size and scale of what was formerly there. But it's really nice to be able to see that there was a bridge over the canal after the construction of Telford Way. Now that's been taken away, the embankments have been raised up on both sides so that you can cross it. It's a really nice find, this one. I'm really, really happy that we found this. Right, now we've seen that, which is pretty recognisable. People of Shrewsbury will definitely know that. And then again, we'll start to move a little bit further out here, and we're going around the back of an area called Sundorn. Now, quite a lot of this area still has water in the canal, which we'll be able to see a little bit later on as we move around. This image from Google Earth does, for some reason, it does seem to make the water look rather green. I've noticed that in the river before, and it also makes the canal water look very green. But the handy thing is it does make it very, very noticeable, so we can see that quite clearly. But as also what you'll notice is the river is moving around on the loop here, and the canal is following the path of the river, which we can see that quite, in fact we can see that clearer on the left hand side than we can on the right. But as we swing all the way around here, just here on the right hand side, if you look, you can see this is a stretch which still has water in, and there is quite a lot of water all the way through this. We'll see if we can find some pictures for that and pop those in. And we come to a place called Pinley Manor, and again there was another bridge over here, and this is where we then go across or under the A49. Again, as you can see on the left hand side, that main road wasn't there. What we have here now is a tunnel under the road. This is actually a national cycle route, so it's heavily used, which is really good because it keeps alive the direction of where the canal was running. And then we'll move a little bit further across here, so we're now over the top of the A49 as we can see on the right hand side here, and the canal is now starting to move down to the village of Huffington. As you can see, it's still very, very close to the River Severn. Here we are at Huffington, but again we can see very, very clearly on the right hand side that the tree line marks out perfectly for what we want to be able to see here. I had to pop these two pictures in that are coming up now. This one here, which is simply marked Huffington on the Shrewsbury Canal, and we have another one coming up of the lift bridge. These are courtesy of the Shrewsbury Newport Canal Trust, which you can find on their website. They've got a fantastic collection of photographs for people to have a look at. This is a great picture of Church Bridge at Huffington. It's also worth pointing out that photographs really weren't all that common. So in order for this photo to have been taken, this would have been pre-organised. Perhaps there was some kind of an event on that day. Looking at the clothes they're all wearing standing on the bridge there, it's a really, really nice photo. I would guess looking at it, it would be in the summertime. Anybody has any information, please do leave the information in the comments below. So now as we start to move away from Huffington, again, we're now moving down. It's a little bit further away from the river. And as we can see here on the right, the tree line is really, really, really noticeable. There's still some embankments in the field. There's still parts of it that have water in. So you can pop along and you can have a look at that. Again, here we have another bridge where the road went over the canal itself. As we drop down here, you can see the trees are really quite thick. This is an area that has water. And again, we come across another bridge as we're moving down towards the railway line. As we get down towards the railway line, we can see that on the left hand side that the railway line was originally there. So the canal went underneath the railway as it was. What wasn't there though is this dual carriageway which comes down from Telford towards Shrewsbury. So Telford is to the right, and this is as you travel from Telford down the M54 becomes the A5. This is the roundabout that you get to. Loads of people don't realise that the road does actually cut straight through the canal bed. Interestingly though, if this section of the canal were to be reconnected, I was talking to some friends of mine and they suspect that the height of the canal on the opposite side, so down here, would have to be a little bit higher than the road. They say it is at the moment, and they suspect that it would support being able to have an aqueduct. Whether that's true or not, I really don't know. But the only other option would be to install a lock system, and if you look at the length of it, it's really quite long, and it would have to be an enormous system, which would cost a hell of a lot of money. Then as we pick up here on the other side of the dual carriageway, the straight of the canal here, which, as if we just zoom in a little bit, we can see that this section is back in water. As we can see from this drone footage that I took recently, on the opposite side there we can see where the canal ran underneath of the railway line. As the camera turns around, we'll join back up with the canal. You can see all the water that's in there now, and we'll move down now slowly towards the portal entrance. A few years ago, you really wouldn't have been able to see an awful lot down here, but it's been cleaned up and cleared by the volunteers of the Shrewsbury Newport Canal Trust. They've really done a fantastic job, the effort that these guys have been putting in. As we fly over the top of the portal here, we'll then drop down and put some pictures in so we can actually see what the portal entrance is looking like at the moment, but this is it from above. This is a picture of the north portal. As you can see, it's partially collapsed on the left-hand side, and that's due to be reconstructed later on in the year. The canal portal itself has been bricked up, but there is some little iron grates so that you can actually see inside. We are hoping to be able to take the drone and the GoPro through it at some point. As we're told, it's in remarkably good condition, so I'm really looking forward to getting into that. Here's a photo of Dave, one of the volunteers, who dug out a chain recently near the old donkey shed at the north portal here. This photo really does typify the hard work that these guys from the Shrewsbury Newport Canal Trust are doing. Everything has to be done manually, and you can see the canal in the background there looking absolutely fantastic. Like I said a few years ago, you wouldn't have been able to get down and see this because it was all overgrown. They really have done a fabulous job. So as we can see from those videos there and the photographs of the volunteers working, the work is really coming together. It's absolutely fantastic, the restoration that is going on this part of the canal. Now, as we move on to the right-hand side, we'll see now that you cannot see anything of the canal, and that is because we're in Berwick Tunnel. If you look on the left-hand side, what you can see here is these circular things here are actually the air vents used to ventilate the tunnel. Very interestingly though, the map on the left shows the tunnel as being straight, but we know it's not straight. So I'll pop some pictures in here from the inside of the tunnel where we can start to see the dog leg. So this is an absolutely fantastic picture that shows quite clearly that the tunnel does not run in a straight line, and it does have this curve, or the dog leg as it's called. This is another picture, a view from the opposite way around, and as we can see here, the tunnel is partially lead lined here for protection. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I shall have to look into that more, but as we say, we're going to be going into the tunnel at some point, so we'll have a really good look at it. These photographs are taken by Google in the summertime, so everything's in bloom, which is absolutely fantastic for it to all look very nice, but what it does for this purpose is it blocks off a lot of the things that we want to be able to see. So with the use of my drone, I have filmed this, and we'll have a look at that now. So here we are on the south side of Berwick Tunnel. Firstly, let me apologise for the drone settings which I had on that day. As we can see on the right hand side, the road is a heck of a lot brighter than it really should be, and the greens aren't quite as natural as they should be either. But what we can see is, because the trees aren't fully in bloom, we can see the path of the canal and we can see the water. To the left hand side is the towpath, and that's accessible from Berwick Wharf behind the camera as it's filming at the moment. You can walk all the way up to the portal entrance. There is a little bridge which has been put over the canal right in front of the portal entrance, and you can get right up to the grated doors and you can shine your torch. You won't see all the way to the end for two reasons. One, because it's got the dog leg and the curve, and two, because it's nearly 887 metres long. But what we'll do now is we will drop down as we're approaching this now, and we'll have a further look at what it looks like today. Here we are moving up to the south portal of Berwick Tunnel. Like I said before, there are grates in the brickwork, so if you do come along, you can walk onto the bridge and you can shine your torches up and take some photos. As we move up here, it'll just turn back around and we can have a nice shot of Dave's bridge and a nice shot of down the canal. It's really absolutely fantastic, the work that's gone on here. So much clearer than it was a few years ago. You really just wouldn't have been able to get back down here. Now, moving away from the south portal of Berwick Tunnel, as we could see in the video, there is water all the way in the canal. It is very silted up, but nevertheless there's still water there. There's a lot of wildlife. As you can see, there's little bits that we can see here on the right, like I said before. But what we can also do is, this little area here is called Berwick Wharf. So what we can do is, should you want to come up and have a look, there is a pull in place here on the road. You can park up. It's very clear because you can see the canal from the road once you park here. There is a towpath like you could see in the video, and then you can walk straight up to the south portal of Berwick Tunnel, have a good look in there. Like I say, if you do go along, there's a little booklet there that the Canal Trust have left there for people to write when they were there. Do leave that there so that we can know that people are actually going up there, having a look. Take a big torch, shine it into the tunnel, and see how far you can see. Now, moving down a little bit further, this area here is called Berwick Wharf. And as we can see, if we just go in a little bit here on the right-hand side, you can see that this large section of the canal still, again, is within water. So, as we can see on the left-hand side, there was a bridge over the canal. After the decommissioning of the canal, these bridges were taken out, so there's no sign of the bridge that was formerly there. But as we swing around here, this is where Berwick Wharf was. And what we'll do is now, because we're getting to quite an interesting part of the canal itself. So what's interesting about this is that the Shrewsbury Canal runs right along the back of the Attingham Park estate in Shropshire. This was owned at the time by Lord Berwick. It was completed in 1785 and is now a Grade 1 listed building. It contains roughly 4,000 acres, so it's not too small. Now the thing is about this, Lord Berwick was one of the financiers of the construction of the canal, and on his orders the canal had to be built as far away from this manor house as possible, and frankly I don't blame him. We look back now with canals with a lot of nostalgia, but to all intents and purposes they were main roads back then. One of the reasons that the canal was actually put in to this area was because the roads were so bad during the winter times. So they were just a means of getting commercial goods to sail and into the local town. So I don't blame Lord Berwick one little bit for wanting that as far away from his house as possible. But as you can see, it's an absolutely spectacular looking building. Okay, here we are up in the air again. Apologies for the drone settings, it was on the same day that I was filming the south portal, so the settings are a bit wrong. But on the left-hand side of the very bright road, you can see the canal. And this has been dug out and cleaned up recently by the National Trust. To the left-hand side is Attingham Park estate, and we're flying down towards Berwick Wharf. So we've started at the other end and we're flying back towards where we were talking about before. But a heck of a lot of work has gone in, and I'll drop some pictures in of what has been done and what it looks like at ground level now. So what we could see from those pictures and the drone footage is that this particular part of the canal has been dug out and restored by the National Trust. As you drive along the road, just where the cursor's moving now, you'll be able to see that very, very clearly. On the area on the right hand side here is the Attingham Park estate, which is owned by the National Trust. So if you do go and visit Attingham Park, pop on round and have a look at the rest of the canal. What we also learnt there was the origin of the name Berwick. Berwick was for Lord Berwick, who owned Attingham Park, as I said, so that gives us the name of Berwick Wharf and Berwick Tunnel. Right, as we start to move a little bit further along here, we can see that the canal is here on its own, next to this road, like it still is. But then what happens is here we start to move away from the road and into the field. So as we're moving away into the fields here, we can see that there's no sign of the canal or where it ran formerly, which is why it's so handy to have on the left-hand side the path, and we can see exactly as we move along the left-hand side, we can move it across and it joins straight up with this here, which becomes a very, very visible tree line, which is where the canal was running. But again, we've got the dual carriageway, so that's going straight through the canal bed, and there is another cutting for the canal to go underneath the railway line. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to zoom back out so we can see exactly where we've covered. We have covered all the way from Shrewsbury town centre, all the way out around Huffington, through Berwick Tunnel, and what we will also notice is we haven't come across a lock yet, and that's simply because of the layout of the land. It was quite flat, and they were able to get this far and actually get really quite far before they had to use a lock. So we've moved from here all the way out and around, all the way down and back across. So we've covered a good section here. Anyway, look out for part 2, and then we will cover that all the way up to Wappenshaw Junction. We have to go through Longdon on Turn, so we'll be having a look at the cast iron aqueduct. Really hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks ever so much for watching.